All right, we should be in business. And this should be a Coke Zero, all going well. It's definitely a Coke Zero. The last 10 months have been the best 10 months of bodybuilding that I've ever put down. And I fell out of love with training. I fell out of love with this whole process for over 2 years, about 2 years. And it was the toughest 2 years, mentally and physically, watching the way the physique went, which really messed with my head. And the last 10 months have been the best mentally and best physically for me. And I just want to keep that going. And I know there might be one person on here that is going through what I went through over those 2 years. And if anything helps on here, I really, really hope it will. Some of you might just be tuning in, following along the daily YouTubes, following along the prep. I appreciate you. Do drop us a subscribe. Doesn't go unnoticed, lads. I am driving home from a long, long drive. Not that long, to be fair, but a long, long day. And when I'm driving on these drives, it's when I do my most thinking, because what else have I got to do? And I think it's when I can give the most amount of like real talk. I feel really like Sam Sulek vibes in here tonight, but that was a rough couple of years. Just everything that was going on in terms of what way I went, you know. Obviously I'm tunnel vision towards the stage right now, and I confidently and hopefully will just stay that way in terms of my trajectory in life across the board, I suppose you could say. Not just gunning for the stage the whole time, but just in terms of progression. The last 10 months, yeah, of course, are the most developmental 10 months I've had in terms of bodybuilding, I want to say, but also my head and the progression I've had in that, the maturity I've had in that, you know, the battles I'm able to come up against and just deal with, you know, like there's not much that would like phase me anymore. You know, I'm sure there's something there, especially as prep goes along over the next couple of weeks, that will try and knock me down, but there isn't much there that would phase me now. You know, I can just crack on if something does go wrong. And there's been multiple periods throughout my entire life, you know, where stuff hasn't been going good, finances, you know, like, and that's not me saying I'm ever in a good position, you know, I'm always fighting the fight, as a lot of us are, you know, and it is what it is. But, you know, that time when I wasn't on top of things and I wasn't in control of myself was the toughest of them all. And that's why I couldn't get a hold of myself, because I just wasn't in control. And it takes time, you know, it really does. Now I'm absolutely thriving in terms of physique development, I suppose you could say. Also at the same time, if I even think about it for a second, I start to think like where I could be, you know, what a lot of us will do, you know, how many years ahead I could be if I hadn't wasted so much time doing what I'd done. But that all just comes with experience. It all just comes with education and just making the mistakes along the way. You know, I've made every mistake in the book. Every mistake in the book when it comes to doing what we're doing here. You know what I mean? And I've learned a lot from it, and I just don't want to make that mistake again. And that's what I'm trying to get across a lot online as well, is just don't make the mistakes I did. And if that's the case of you following along everything that I'm doing, that's what I'm trying to show on here. I'm trying to show on here, I suppose with YouTube it's a lot more like long form, in depth. I can really give you detail on what it takes and what it doesn't take. You know, you can do this and you can make it as hard or as easy as you want for yourself. You can make it as enjoyable or unenjoyable as you want for yourself as well. And right now, every single day is so bloody enjoyable, and I just want it to last. And that's up to me. That's up to me. It's not up to my calories going to rock bottom or my cardio going through the roof. You know what I mean? That's up to me to dictate whether I'm going to have an enjoyable day. And that's the first tip, is I'm only worried about today. You know what I mean? Like, I'm on the way home here now. All I'm worried about is just making sure my food is nailed for the day. My steps are already done. I am 2,000 steps above what I'm meant to do, which is a bit of a general occurrence for us on here with what I be at. My cardio's done, my training is done. All I have to do is just get in the last meal, and I've had a pretty successful day. Now, I am going through a bit of a stressful period because I'm trying to hammer everything that I'm doing, but I've put that on my own back and I'm thriving with it. It's making the prep a lot easier because I'm like just not slowing down. I'm using the momentum of the prep. But it does add a little bit of stress, you know, and there's nothing wrong with a bit of stress, you know, if you're in control of it. But tomorrow, you know, I've got another full-on day. I've got setups that need to go out, and I'm, you know, having that little bit of anxiety that I need to get those setups out, and just thoughts like that, you know, that kind of way. And obviously doing everything that I need to get done, you know, again, getting the cardio nailed, getting the steps done, getting the food nailed. But I know I'll do it, you know what I mean? Because it's enjoyable. And I don't think, I haven't complained at all throughout this entire prep. Yeah, might be tired at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying to Danielle, I'm tired. But it's more so, she won't watch these now, it's more so what makes me like annoyed is like when she tells me I'm being moody or anything. Like, I'm actually not. It's only when someone tells me like I'm being moody that I actually be like, I'm not fucking moody, you know, that kind of way. So it's mainly, you know, she's been away for the week, which has been, you know, obviously like much easier in terms of prep because I've been on my own the whole time and I just crack on. I have to manage when she's around, you know, because she's going to be around for the majority of the prep, which I want her to be, for fuck's sake, she's my fiance. But you just have to like sit back and think to yourself before you like say anything stupid because of being on prep, you know, and your mind's starting to dwindle that small little bit. But anyway, besides the point, I'm jumping away from the topic I wanted to talk about before any of this prep kicked off was, you know, how I managed to just get myself back to it. And I'll tell you this much, the first number of months weren't enjoyable. You know what I mean? They weren't. And I didn't have that purpose back and that drive back to do this that we're doing here every day. Coke Zeros from like, this is Burger King because I was passing it, like McDonald's, any of them are the nicest Coke Zeros that you can have. I suppose just because they're so cold with the ice in them. But this won't last me too long. It's just going to get me home. And I'm bursting to go toilet again. That's another joys of prep. Like, you cannot drive far without needing to go toilet. But we get on with it. Anyway, those couple of months they weren't enjoyable, getting that first initial bit of fat back off, because you know what the worst feeling in the world is, and I hate it, and I'm never putting myself in that position again, is redoing, like going back to a position, you know, letting yourself fall back to a position that you were in, and then trying to climb back to where you were because you slip back into your old ways. There's no worse feeling than that, and there's no worse time wasted, I suppose you could say. Regardless of the time, it's just a horrible feeling, you know what I mean? Like, sending myself into a position, you know, where I was 105 bloody kilos. The heaviest, the worst looking I'd ever been. You know, I was out of the gym. I trained literally on one hand times in the space of nearly a year. And that is no word of a lie. You know what I mean? That is no word of a lie at all, which is, it is what it is, you know, that kind of way. And that happened. And why? When I look back at it now, I'm thinking, I don't know, man. But when I was in that mode, I was looking at people in the gym and I was thinking, how are you just on it here? You know, how are you just enjoying this? Coming from a place of true love for training, bodybuilding, dieting, like the whole process. Even though I've never actually gone through a successful like off season or successful gaining phase where you're like locked into focusing on building muscle and not dieting for a couple of years or a year at least. You know, what me and Keane did there last year from basically like September to January, I suppose you could say, is the longest kind of successful gainer phase I've ever done, which is mental, you know what I mean? And it does make you think a lot of like, how much muscle have I left on the table here? You know, where could I be at? But it is what it is, you know, there's no point in whinging about it and just cracking on now where we're at. We're doing this prep, I'm still a junior, I'm going to get the junior season under my belt. I'm under no illusion that I have got much muscle, but we're chasing condition, and I'm showing you how you get into condition, and we're going to get nasty peeled, lads, and it's going to hurt, but I'm going to show you how it's done if you want to do that as well. Some of you probably are doing that. Some of you will get in better condition than I will, but I'm going to go through the hurt as much as needs be. Who knows what lies ahead of us, if it will hurt or maybe it won't, do you know what I mean? Because right now we're absolutely cruising. Now when I say cruising, look, there is sometimes where energy in the gym and stuff does like dip that small little bit and everything, but it's not a big deal, you know what I mean? We don't let that ruin our day. We don't let this go that way. We're on a straight line at the moment and it's really enjoyable. But to get out of that, I just said, look, you have to get to a point where enough is enough. You really do. Otherwise, you're just going to continue going around in that circle, trying to get back on it, not getting back on it until you finally commit to it. And look, last year for me, that was just me saying to Keane, finally, look, we need to do this. You know what I mean? We need to do it. And I just said to him, look, set the plan up here. Let's do it. Slowly work my way back into the gym, like not going balls to the walls like I am now 5 days a week. Just like 2 to 3 sessions, getting back into it. And it was shit, man. It was shit. I was the fattest I'd ever been, pretty much, I think. I had like strength was just rock bottom, you know, compared to where it was previously, which is super annoying as well. I felt really uncomfortable, nervous, anxious, like embarrassed going into the gym. Just had to start going through that, you know, and just going through those couple of shitty weeks, which took a while to even see a tiny bit of a return on. You know, it was only when we got to the end of that dieting phase where, you know, we started to see the physique responding, and that is where the love started to come back. But it took quite a while of just going through the day-to-day, of nailing the diet, like just going hard with the diet, to be honest with you. I'm not going to tell you I didn't go hard, like we went 0 carb for quite a while, but we knew the job that we had at hand. You know, it's not something we're doing right now. Probably will be for a couple of weeks, but that there last year was just literally, right, we need to get this fat off. We know next year is your last year to be able to prep as a junior. We want to do that. Let's just get the fat off, reverse successfully, because I have reversed successfully kind of before, but not properly. Reversed really well because we didn't get that lean anyway, so it wasn't really that big of a job for us to reverse. But my why was there now. My want was there to progress. You know, I had reasons behind it. But it didn't happen overnight. It took bloody months. And I'm sorry to say that, but it is the reality of it. You know, and it will be the reality for a lot of you who may have, you know, been in a position where I was maybe before, like even doing a couple of photo shoots. And then all of a sudden you're back here, which is just horrible. You know, like it affected everything. It affected my business. It affected, I suppose, my relationship. You know, like what was Danielle looking at? You know, I suppose it kind of gets faded because Danielle sees pictures and she's thinking like, whoa, like what the fuck? You know, Dan doesn't give me too much. Like she does sometimes, but she's not blowing smoke up my hole saying, you look good here, you look good there. She tells me some days, but like, she's not here saying, oh, you're getting shredded, babe, because like, fucking it is what it is, you know. But like, at the same time, she kind of was blind to the fact how fat I'd gotten as well, because we were just going through life, like living, you know what I mean? But I was embarrassed taking my clothes off in front of her, you know what I mean? Like, and that's not a good position you want to be in. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that might be watching this that are in that position right now as well. And I think having yourself in shape, you know, obviously I'm saying that now because I am kind of getting into shape, for your missus or for your fella is, you know, a duty that you can have there, a responsibility that you can have there, you know what I mean? to try and work towards, and you should want to do it for your kids, man. I know I haven't experienced kids yet, but something I want to fucking start relatively soon, if I can, is a family. And it's just like, there's no point, you know what I mean? There's no point in going through every single day just feeling horrible. Whereas you could just say to yourself, okay, look, it's going to be a couple of months here where we're going to grind hard. And for me, last year, it was like starting at the end of this month now, so it hasn't even been it has been a full year. My apologies, because me and Keane had our 1 year anniversary since we started working together like a week or two, probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it's been over a year. But in and around this time, as of filming this, it's only been about a year, you know. You can do a lot in a year. You really can do a lot in a year. A lot of people, you know, think they can do life-changing work in 12 weeks, all right? Yeah, you probably can. But you can definitely do life-changing work in bloody 12 months. We've been through a couple of phases in 12 months, you know. It's not all just 12 months of losing fat, you know, not all of it. A good bit of it was. No point in saying it isn't, but it's just the reality of it. Now I've gotten myself in a position that I truly, after just spending a lot of time last summer in my own head, working out how I always ended up back here. How have I always ended up back here? Yet again, we're in 2024. I've landed myself back here now again. I did my first photo shoot end of 2020. You know, like that last 4 years, like, what have you done? Yeah, you've done some stuff, but like, what have you done? Do you know what I mean? Like, where could you be? And that is enough in itself. You know, that is enough in itself to be like, right, let's go for it here. And now we're in that position right now. And that's why I can kind of like speak my words on it. Because I kind of spent that time last year just going through it. And that's what some people on here might need too, you know what I mean? You might just need to spend that time in your head. I say it a lot on consults, I say it a lot to the lads. You need to spend time just thinking about different things. And it sounds really cringy, like I'm not big into all that kind of stuff. I'm not. At all, I never have been. But last year, just like in my head, while I was just going on the day-to-day, like doing these drives, going work and doing this, doing that, just like, okay, like, how did you land up here? And I'll leave you on this, okay, for yourselves. And I've made an ebook on this. If you want it, click the link in the description below. There is a video that I ran through, which is about 30 minutes long, which will go really far in depth on this. If you want it, send me a message on Instagram or comment down below and I'll get in touch with you on why you've landed yourself in here, right? The position you are in, why you've landed yourself in here, right? And how you've always landed yourself back here again, you know, round in full circle, and what it's going to look like for you to not be in this position. And then you need to put the steps in place to get out of that position, and having spent that time understanding what it feels like to be back in that position and in that position now, and having to go back through that process of rebuilding again. That's what you want to be thinking about, to just get out of it once and for all. Get that love back for training, get the love back for the process, get the love back for just being in control and being on top of your shit. You know, that kind of way? We're going to do loads more of these. That was just a brief rundown of what I could have spoken about. But if there's any other topics, any other bits and bobs you want me to talk about, lads, on these drives, please let me know. You know, that mightn't have been interesting at all, and I might have gone around in circles, but I like to ramble. It really helps me just get stuff off my chest and makes this easier. You know, I would have just been driving home on my own this evening just listening to some shit, when I could have just been getting stuff off my chest, which gets stress levels lower for me, and it just feels better, to be completely honest. If you haven't, drop the video a like. It takes 2 seconds. It really helps me out. Pushes this video somewhere else to someone who might need to see it. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to enjoy the rest of this Coke Zero. I hope you're having a lovely evening, morning, afternoon, cardio session, drive, or whatever you're up to. All right, I hope someone can get something out of this. And I'll see you tomorrow. we're on the daily here. We're doing it on the daily, lads.